Hello everybody, this is Tealus here and welcome to Arcturus, the most boring of all the class order halls that is given to us in World of Warcraft Legion. Basically, Blizzard decided to take the easy route and just give us back Arcturus for Death Knights in World of Warcraft Legion. This is going to be the Frost specialization video. We're going to be taking a look at Frost DKs in this video. Arcus specifically has just received a few visual upgrades. Some of the new things. You can see this new dragon up here, Voragosa, is actually flying up top. They've made it bigger and they've moved it. If you've noticed, out in the distance here, we have the we have actually, I believe that is the Tomb of Sargeras, that big green light out there. And if you look even further in the distance, that is actually the silhouette of Dalaran. So basically, Arcturus has been moved to the Lost Isles. It is now here. It is the Broken Isles, excuse me, instead of being all the way over in Eastern Kingdoms off the edge of the Eastern Plaguelands. So it has moved, and it's larger. They expanded it somehow, yet for some reason they expanded it and somehow made it look exactly the same. Very impressive feat. It's almost like a new Arcturus is built. They just built it the exact same and made it bigger. So, with that being said, I did say that this is the Frost Death Knight video, or videos. This first video we will look at Frost Death Knight abilities and its new artifact weapons. I will show you right here. They look somewhat nice. To be honest, they're not my favorites. I don't really like them. I do believe they are built out of fragments of the old Frostmourne. I have not done the storyline. But these are your artifact weapons. Do know that you can buff up your artifact weapons and make them look different and cooler. So that may be something that you may want to do later on. But this is the baseline for your artifact weapons. That is the portion we will get to at the end of this video. In this first video, we will look at the removed, changed, and new abilities for a Frost Death Knight, and then we will look at the artifact weapons and what that brings for a Frost Death Knight. And then in the second video, we will take a look at the PvE and PvP talents for a Frost Death Knight. So, let's go ahead and get straight into it. I will say Frost Death Knight is in the 1/3 of specs that really has not changed much. Blizzard has done a little bit of sorting in terms of Death Knights. They wanted to kind of diversify the specs a little bit. It's nowhere near as potent as what has happened to rogues and hunters, but they wanted to change. They've attempted to change things in the past to make them more different. They tried to make Frost about Frost stuff, and make Unholy about your diseases, and that was like a step in the right direction. But they were still very much the same. This time around, they nailed it. Frost is really truly only about Frost stuff. And you'll see that as we start going through the removed abilities. And then once we reach the new abilities, you'll see how the playstyle of Frost has changed ever so slightly from what it used to be. So, with that being said, let's take a look at the removed abilities. This one's really going to hurt. This is the big dagger to the heart, and that is Army of the Dead is gone. Army of the Dead is now an unholy only ability. Frost Death Knights do not have access to it, and you will not be able to use it. It's basically Unholy has become kind of the pet and the disease class, and so Army of the Dead fits that perfectly. They tried to remove Army of the Dead last expansion, and people cried and cried. Rightfully so, because I mean it's a really cool ability, and they got it back, but this time looks like Blizzard held their ground, and so Army of the Dead has been removed for all specs except for Unholy. Blood Boil has been removed for all specs except for Blood. That makes sense. It really doesn't make sense for Blood Boil to be on anyone else but Blood, because Blood Boil was used as kind of like an AoE taunt, and it's that allows Blood Boil to be there and still be that AoE taunt for Blood Death Knights. Blood Presence, Frost Presence, and Unholy Presence have all been removed from the game. Blizzard really wanted to get rid of any type of stance in the game. They want to get rid of all of them. So, I mean, battle stance, defensive stance, stance of the white tiger, all of them have been removed. It really didn't make sense for stances to be in the game unless it made a significant difference. Like you would pop into blood presence, and you would all of a sudden be like a healing machine and a tanking machine. But that's really hard to balance, especially in PvP. So now all stances have been removed. The only class that even has remotely close to that is going to be druids, and that makes sense. They're the shapeshifters. They're supposed to be stance dancing, and they have actually a talent row dedicated to kind of enhancing one of their off stances or off transformations to make them actually a little bit proficient at it so they can use it when the time comes. The next ability that has been removed is Dark Simulacrum. I don't know if I can pronounce that correctly. It's still back as a PvP talent, so if you want to grab it as a PvP talent, you can, but as a baseline talent, it has been removed from the game. Death and Decay has also been removed. It is now Blood and Unholy only. I will say that there is an AoE ability that is coming that will replace it, so do not worry, Frost Death Knights. I mean, you already have Howling Blast, which does ridiculous amounts of AoE damage, but you have another AoE ability that is coming to replace it that fits with the spec more and plays into that Frost-only play style. Empower Rune Weapon has been removed. I was a bad Frost Death Knight player, so I didn't really know this ability very well. But I remember it being able to restore some runic power or runes to that regard. So that was something that was that I I didn't notice too much, but it was there, and now it has been removed from the game. Horde of Winter has been removed. Anything that basically provided any type of buff has been removed. Mark of the Wild, Arcane Brilliance, Power Word, I think it's Fortitude. Anything like that has been removed from the game. If Horde of Winter was still in its original form where it was just like a 2-minute buff, it might have stayed in the game. And it actually still is in as a talent. But any type of just flat buff for 60 minutes for your raid has been removed because it just didn't, it came to the point where everyone had every type of buff, and then it really didn't mean anything anymore to have that raid buff. So why not just get rid of them? And I kind of agree with it. These next two signal the change of the major change in an Unholy Death Knights. This change is not big enough to put it in the category of a completely revamped spec like the other 2/3 of specs in this expansion, but it's pretty big. Both Outbreak and Plague Strike have been removed. Like I said at the beginning, Blizzard is moving Frost Death Knights away from any type of non-frost damage and really entrenching the diseases into the unholy side of Death Knights. So there's no reason for Plague Strike anymore because that was your ability to put in Blood Plague. I believe that's the name of the plague that was put in. So they got rid of that, and then with that you don't need Outbreak anymore because you're not applying multiple diseases at the same time, and you don't have to worry about the old time of Obliterate needing both your diseases on the target to do extra damage. You don't need that anymore. So both of those have been removed. They don't need them anymore. Strangulate has been removed. I'm not sure if this is actually still a PvP talent in one of the other trees, but I will tell you that it is completely removed from Frost at this point. It is not an ability that Frost can rely on, not in PvP or PvE talents. Unholy Presence, as I mentioned, has been removed. Soul Reaper, the last big ability that has been that was given to Death Knights in your leveling process. I believe you get it at like level 87. It has been removed across the board. I have not seen it anywhere. It may be in a PvP talent tree somewhere, maybe PvE talent tree. I don't know everything about all the specs until I actually start doing my research into each individual spec before I start doing these videos. So it could be in there somewhere, but to my knowledge, as far as baseline abilities, Soul Reaper is completely gone. Unholy Aura has been removed. Anything that gave you that baseline aura has been removed. I have noticed that there is a type of auras. There are auras that have been added into the PvP talent tree that we will look at in the next video, but Unholy Aura has been removed. Icy Touch has been removed. This is kind of a big deal. Icy Touch was really never used as a Frost Death Knight, um, because everything Icy Touch could do, Howling Blast could do better. So, I mean, like, what was the reason of actually having Icy Touch ever, or even using Icy Touch? So, that has been removed from the game. Icy Touch is no longer there. Icy Talons has been removed, which was a passive, and then Might of the Frozen Waste has been removed. Some things that you may that were kind of essential in terms of passives have been kind of baked in. But in terms of something like, I believe it was Might of the Frozen Waste, you're locked into, because of your artifact weapons, you're locked into dual wielding. So, you know, that's something you won't miss. In terms of passives, a lot of them you won't miss very much, and you won't notice too much. You'll see new passives added to the game, and so it won't affect your playstyle too much. Now, before I get into the changed abilities, because that is all of the removed abilities, before I get into the changed abilities, there's a big change that you need to know. It is the biggest change of all. If you look in the top left-hand corner, I have all my runes there, all 6 of them. And you'll notice that they're all the same color. There is no longer any blue runes. There's no longer, yes, there's no more blue runes, which were the frost runes. There are no more blood runes. There are no more unholy runes. There are no more death runes. They're just runes. They've simplified it to just runes. To the expert DK player who likes to feel superior to people, or likes that greater challenge, either or, you may be disappointed because that was something that was skillful that you had to pay attention to. For those who got always frustrated with, like, "Oh, I've got all these blood runes up," or I've got all these unholy runes up, and I want to use my frost runes. You no longer have to worry about that anymore. So Blizzard was already working towards this. I believe last expansion they basically converted blood runes for both of the DPS specs into death runes that you can use in whatever, and now they're just making it all runes. So before I go any further, assume that every time anything costs a rune in game, I will not mention it. I'm not going to mention this no longer costs a frost rune, it costs a rune. If it costs a rune, a frost rune, it will cost 1 rune. If it costs an unholy rune and a blood rune, it will cost 2 runes. So however many runes it costs for, no matter the aspect of that rune, it will cost the same amount of runes unless I specifically state it. Just want to clear that up. So, with that, let's look at the changed abilities. First is Anti-Magic Shell. Its cooldown has been increased from 45 seconds to 60 seconds, so a nerf there in your defensive capabilities. Chains of Ice has been changed in that its movement speed reduction has been increased to 70% from 60%. So definitely inching back towards that really nice, if you remember, I think Icy Touch was like 90%, and every time anyone got hit with Icy Touch back in Wrath of the Lich King, I mean, you just like screamed. I loved using it. But that's no longer going to be the case anymore. But it is slowly moving back towards there. We're at 70% now. Very few abilities in the game can snare you for 70%. Rogues, I believe it's sub-rogues can spec into it. But nobody, I think, has it baseline. I could be wrong. Maybe we'll find out once I get through all of them, all of these specs, and I've completed them all. But for the most part, 70% now for Chains of Ice. However, do know that Chains of Ice no longer applies Frost Fever. Frost Fever is only going to be applied by 1 ability. Control Undead, it no longer reduces the target's haste. Before, when you controlled an undead minion, it would reduce their haste as like a penalty, so it wasn't overpowered. I don't get it. I don't know why that was there. That's been removed. Just when you control an undead, the guy's going to be able to work like he normally does. He's not going to have an ankle bracelet or something that's got a weight on it. So he's going to be able to function at full capacity. Death Grip no longer functions at a taunt, so you can no longer taunt targets with Death Grip. That's a welcome change to pretty much most DPS Death Knights who never really wanted to taunt something with Death Grip. So that 3-second taunt from Death Grip is now gone. If it was gone before, I apologize. It is now officially not in the tooltip. when I go through this, looking at the research, I compare my live Death Knight to the PvP Realm Death Knight, and that has been removed from the tooltip. So it's no longer a taunt that is available for you. Ironically, though, dipping into the new abilities, Dark Command is now a new ability available to Frost Death Knights. For some reason, Blizzard has given taunts to everyone. Even Restoration Druids have taunts without even speccing into a Guardian Affinity. They have access to a taunt, and as you can see here, I still have the ability Dark Command here as a Frost Death Knight. So not really sure why they did that, but you have a taunt now if you really need it as a Frost Death Knight. Death Strike. Death Strike has been changed. It no longer costs runes, but instead costs 40 runic power. And it will now heal based on the damage received in the past 5 seconds up to 7% of your health. So let's say you take 20% of your damage in 5 seconds. You use Death Strike, you'll get healed back for 7% of your health. If you take 5% of your health in the past 5 seconds, you'll be healed for 5% of your health. So up to 7%, instead of just flat healing. I think it's been a while, but I think this is how Death Strike somewhat functioned before. I could be wrong, but it has been changed to this new method or old method. I cannot remember, but this is the new way of how healing will work on Death Strike now, and this is your sustain. And it costs a bunch. 40 runic power costs a bunch. Comparatively, Frost Strike's runic power has now been cut down to 25 from 40. So definitely the cheaper of the two, and the one that you want to actually be using for damage. Death Strike is now being put out as the one that you use when you actually need some healing back, and you need to bring up your health a little bit. You may not deal as much damage because you're not able to dish out as much with as much runic power, but you'll be able to get the heal off in the fact. Now, I am going to go through, as soon as I've gone through these changed abilities, I'm going to go through and kind of do rotation and so forth down there, so you guys can hear all the brand new sound effects that are coming. Blizzard has worked really hard on melee sound effects and melee visuals. For the most part, melee visuals have not changed on Frost Death Knight because their melee visuals were already pretty cool. But the sound effects have changed, and I got this really cool icy sound effect on pretty much all of their abilities, which really plays into the the fantasy of a Frost Death Knight. Howling Blast has changed a bit. Damage to non-primary target is no longer equal to the primary target. Now, I was going off the tooltip of what was on live, and on live it was saying that basically damage was the same across the board. I know this has fluctuated throughout time, whether it be in different betas or actually on live clients, but now main target will take more from Howling Blast than your secondary target. Frost Fever infection now only lasts 24 seconds, down from 30 seconds. The reason why this is being stated here underneath Howling Blast is because this is the only ability that actually applies Frost Fever now. With Icy Touch gone, this is your ability to apply Frost Fever. Now here's the great change, is each tick of Frost Fever damage gives runic power. This is awesome. So every time I deal damage with runic power, I will also get, every time I deal damage with Frost Fever, each tick I will get more out of runic power. So I'm going to go ahead and start using these abilities here so you can actually see what they look like and sound like, and it just sounds so much better. So there's Howling Blast. It really hasn't changed too much. But we'll go ahead and use Frost Strike here, and you'll start hearing the new sound effects, and it really sounds good. Let me go ahead and get enough here for a Death Strike so you can hear it, what it looks like. It really looks nice. So I really do like the changes that they have made with the changes to the sound effects and the visual effects. For melee, they are planning to get to ranged in the future, but for now they're kind of testing out how melee it looks on how people respond to the changes to melee sound effects. Let me see if I can actually get some damage without killing myself here and test how much healing I can get out of Death Strike here. I will try and be gentle to this thing here. so it doesn't obliterate me. And I believe that's enough damage. And Death Strike heals you for 124. That's what it did earlier. 124. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to work. It heals you for 20% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds, minimum of 7% of your maximum health. So you can get a lot of damage taken, and it'll heal up to 7% of your maximum health on that. That is going to be your sustain, but both times here it is shown that I've only healed for 124,000, and to give you an idea of my health pool is at 1.4 million, so 124,000 is roughly 7% of my health. So it has been healing for that every time, no matter how much damage I've taken. So you can expect at least 7% of your health being healed back for Death Strike when you use it. So, with that little detour, let's head back into changed abilities. First off, Mind Freeze now has a 15-yard range up from melee range. This is an extremely welcome change. Obliterate really has not changed at all, other than Rhyme has been separated. I'll go ahead and use Obliterate so that you can actually hear the new sound effect as well on that. You can see it's really nice. So they've really done a great job with the new sound effects, making them a little bit different. So Rhyme has been separated from the ability. For some reason, last expansion they decided to combine them all, and it kind of made sense then for them to combine these passives that were just like overloading your spell book and putting them into the abilities, and now they're taking them back out. The important ones, they're taking them back out and readjusting them. Pillar of Frost now increases damage by 20% up from 15%, so there's a change there. Dark Sucker, I think that's how you pronounce it. It now lasts 20 seconds up from 15. 20 second, you now have 20 seconds to find a new target and, to deal death strike damage to get an increased heal, as opposed to only having 15 seconds. On a Pale Horse no longer reduces movement reduction effects. So that's kind of a big thing, not having that there anymore. That's been a part of it for a little bit now, and they have now removed that, and it now is just the base 20% increased movement speed. Lastly, Rhyme has changed in that it now also increases Howling Blast damage by 300%. So when Rhyme procs down here, if I can get it to proc here, it will now deal 300% increased damage. So I'm going to use it here. It does 68,000 damage, and then a normal one only does 19,000 damage. So huge increase in your damage when you get those Rhyme procs. So that is all of the, kind of changed abilities. And now we need to look into the 3 new abilities. And this is where this completes the circle of your loss of Plague Strike and Outbreak and how you're going to change that. First off, we've already discussed Dark Command. Dark Command is here. I don't know why it's here, but Dark Command is here for you to use. There's Wraith Walk, which is a brand new ability. It's very much like Reaper from Overwatch. You sidestep into the Shadowlands, breaking root effects and increasing your movement speed by 70% for 3 seconds. During this time, all movement impairing effects are suppressed, but attacking will cancel the effects. So I'll go ahead and use it here. As you can see, I've become Reaper for a few seconds. You can use it as a gap closer. 70% movement speed is pretty good. It's on a minute cooldown though, so now you have Death Grip and Wraith Walk to use to your advantage. So the big change, the new ability, Remorseless Winter. Yeah, I know. It's not really new. It's a talent, but it's now baseline. And it's been changed. It's no longer a minute cooldown. It is now a 20-second cooldown, and it costs 1 rune. This is now intended to be a part of your baseline. It will no longer stun. However, you drain the warmth of life from all nearby enemies, dealing 72,000 frost damage over 8 seconds and reducing their movement speed by 50%. This gives you sticking power on a target. As you can see, I now go in here, and this is now a part of the rotation, is having Remorseless Winter up. It's got a 40% uptime on having Remorseless Winter up. That's pretty powerful to have that type of uptime for Remorseless Winter. And so as you can see, I've already got it up again, and I can start using it again. So instead of having to be using Blood Plague, or excuse me, your Plague Strike every so often to keep your Blood Plague up, you now are going to be using Remorseless Winter every 20 seconds to be on the target, which I think is I think it's great, and it's really the final kind of change that really transforms truly Frost Death Knight into this Frost Warrior, as opposed to still clinging on to that old disease playstyle. The only reason Frost Fever is still there is because that is frost damage. There's no reason why Frost Fever shouldn't still be a part of the spec, but get rid of the other stuff like Blood Plague. So, with that, that is everything regarding the new ability changes in World of Warcraft Legion for a Frost Death Knight. Now we get to take a look at these new artifact weapons that we have here. Let's go ahead and pull them up. They're called Blades of the Fallen Prince, which I believe mentioned at the beginning that I do believe these are made from the fragments of Frostmourne. I could be wrong because I haven't done this actual storyline, but these are called the Blades of the Fallen Prince. You have one called Frost Reaper and the other called Icebringer. Real imaginative names there. Um, sorry for the little accusation there, but they aren't very imaginative. But I guess the real important thing is that you have the Blades of the Fallen Prince. Now, I will say, this is the second specialization in which your first ability that you get, which is in the top left-hand corner here, is a passive. A lot of times you get an active ability. This time you get a passive to start off with. And as Crystalline Swords, your melee attacks have a chance to create icy copies of Icebringer and Frost Reaper, which will then stab and pierce your foes. So, let's go ahead and see that here. I'm going to go ahead and just exit out of all of this. So you can see, I'll start doing damage, Remorseless Winter, you name it. I need to work on my rotation, because I'm played Frost Death Knight, whatever. I do believe that the changes to Rhyme and how things function will change the rotations a bit, to my knowledge. But as you can see here, I now have both, what is it, Ice Reaper, or Frost Reaper, and I don't even know the other one. I've already forgotten it already. We have Frost Reaper and Icebringer. They're now, each copies of them are on the side, and they poke and stab my opponents, along with the two that are actually in my hands. So that is the passive. That is for this artifact weapon. So with that, let's go ahead and go through the talent tree. Remember, the epic portraits are the big ones. Those are the ones that are really cool. And we will go down the list and just kind of read these off from the northwest corner down to the southeast corner. So starting here, we already have Crystalline Swords. So then we have Blades of Frost, increases attack speed by 8%. We have a Blast Radius, increases the damage dealt by Howling Blast by 30%. We have Nothing But the Boots, increases the critical strike damage done by Obliterate and Frost Scythe by 30%. 33, so it's 10% per stack. Do know that this is one of the rare times in which a talent actually makes its way into the artifact weapon talent tree. Frost Scythe is a talent that we will get to in the next video. It's a PvE talent. Our first epic ability here is Hypothermia. Each time Frost Fever deals damage, its damage increases by 10%. I have been trying to test this and have not had great success at testing this. Let me go ahead and I will apply Frost Fever to this target here. And this target is dealing 16,000 frost damage. And as I continue to reapply it, it goes up continually with the damage. It's now at 35. I've determined that it caps out somewhere. They don't really tell you where it caps out, but it does cap out somewhere. I'm not quite sure where it is. It will cap out the amount of damage increase you can get from hypothermia. They don't really announce it in the actual the talent tree. They don't announce where it caps out. I just know that it caps out somewhere. So each time Frost Fever deals damage, its damage increases by 10%. Now that's damage to anyone. So the reason why it built up so quickly and is at 37,000 is because I was hitting multiple targets with Frost Fever, and so it was able to tick up pretty quickly. Let me see if I can get out of combat there and see if it will go back down. I'm not sure. In the meantime, we will continue to go through this list of talents here. First, we have Chill of the Grave, increases the range of Frost Strike by 8 yards. This is awesome, okay? Having a 13-yard range on Frost Strike, once again, more sticking power for a Frost DK. You may be able to slightly get out of range of Remorseless Winter, but he's still going to be hitting you with Frost Strikes, so beware of that if you're facing off against a Frost Death Knight. You have Ambidexterity. I believe I pronounced that right. Increases the offhand weapon damage dealt by Frost Strike and Obliterate by 30%. I believe that was in a passive somewhere. Now it's in a passive in your talent tree. Shame they didn't come up with something different, but that's what it is there. Bad to the Bone increases the effectiveness of your Razor Ice Rune Forge by 100%. Frozen Core, your Pillar of Frost, also increases frost damage dealt by 6%. We have Frozen Skin, increases your armor by 10%. We have Mirror Ball, Anti-Magic Shell, also removes all harmful magical effects when activated. So that is not baseline. It will absorb magic, but this will just remove all harmful magical effects when activated. So that's actually a really nice, one of the nicer talents to have, and maybe one of the ones that people want to gun for very quickly. We have Ice in Your Veins. Death Strike heals for 300% more while Icebound Fortitude is active. Wow, let's try that here. I gotta find Icebound Fortitude. It's right there, and I actually have to build up. Well, we can test this. Let's go ahead and test this Frost Fever here now. Go ahead and use it on this target. Frost Fever is only at 16,000, and now it's at 20,000. And now, oh, still at 20,000. So waiting for the ticks to come through. 22,000. And it's each time you apply it. It's staying at 22,000. Okay? No matter what. So it's each time I apply it, it's going to increase. Now it's at 30,000. And if I apply it to something like this will apply it to 3 different targets. So it bursts up there pretty quickly because of that. So it's at 32,000 now. So once again, they don't tell you the limit on this ability, Hypothermia, but it is there. So, just wanted to clarify that before we get into this Death Strike testing here. We have, where is it? It is known as Ice in Your Veins. Death Strike heals for 300% more while Icebound Fortitude is active. I'll go ahead and use Death Strike now, and it's 124,000. Let's go ahead and use Icebound Fortitude and use Death Strike again, and he heals for 500,000. Oh my goodness, that's a third of my health right there. That's incredible. Remember that Icebound Fortitude lasts for 8 seconds. If you can get 3 Death Strikes off in the middle of Icebound Fortitude, you're back up to full health. That's almost broken. That may be broken. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes getting it onto live servers. Jeez. So with that, we have Cold as Ice. Increases all frost damage you deal by 10%. We have Overpowered. Obliterate has a 10% chance to generate 10 additional runic power. So it has chance to just generate some more runic power for you. We have Dead of Winter. Increases the damage dealt by Remorseless Winter by 15%. Over here we have Frozen Soul. This is a passive. When Remorseless Winter ends, Icebringer and Frost Reaper release a burst of 8,000 frost damage, increased by 100% for each additional enemy you hit during Remorseless Winter. Let's see if we can try this here. I'll just use Remorseless Winter, hit different enemies, go across, deal lots of damage, and there you can see the blast at the end there. That is the blast at the end there. That is the from Icebringer and Frost Reaper. So that's pretty cool. So the last thing to test here is going to be Sindragosa's Fury. Summons Sindragosa. You have somehow gained command over Sindragosa. Not really sure how. If anything, I would assume that you would gain control of 4 ghosts up in near the top here, but you now gain Sindragosa's Fury. Summon Sindragosa, breathes frost on all enemies within a 40-yard and within 40 yards in front of you, dealing 102,000 frost damage and slowing movement speed by 50%. This was taken directly from Arthas in Heroes of the Storm if you've not played Arthas. So, let's go ahead and test this out so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to choose this target at the end. You're going to see, you've already seen this several times. Several other DKs have been in here playing this. Now you actually get to see it done by me. So go ahead and use it, and there we go. Syndragosa just comes down and deals frost damage, puts down the ice carpet, just kind of snaring everything in its path. So that is the cool ability that you may want as a Frost Death Knight. However, do you know that that is a 5-minute cooldown? It's a pretty long cooldown. You definitely lost your Army of the Dead, but you gained Syndragosa. Honestly, that probably would be one of the last abilities that I take. Specifically speaking, because it's a 5-minute cooldown, and I just think the other ones are better. While that may be the coolest looking one, anything that is targeted, hunters have a new ability called Stampede. It very much has the same problem. When it's in a straight line, it ends up missing a lot of players. It's just not as useful as you might think. So I don't know how popular that will be. We'll see. I mean, you get a baseline, so it's going to be used. It's easily going to be used in PvE. In PvP, maybe not the same story. Maybe if you get choke points or whatnot, Death Knights will have to be very careful when they use that. Otherwise, it can be a very powerful ability because 102,000 damage is nothing to sneeze at. Just to put you in perspective, Howling Blast does 17,000 frost damage, so 102,000 damage does a lot. But if you look here, Frost Strike does 101,000 damage. So I don't know how big that's going to be. Obliterate does 100,000 damage. I mean, you can't complain when it's a cooldown. It may have to have its damage buffed, and that's what may possibly still happen. There's a lot of changes still coming in the game, and that's what could happen. There's still balance tuning. The only reason I'm doing this video is because I believe most of their abilities and talents are set in stone, as opposed to other classes in which they're still getting their abilities changed around a bunch. I believe for the most part that Frost Death Knights are in a safe place in which they will not be changing very much, though their damage numbers could be tweaked. So, that is everything for Frost Death Knights. I am very shocked to see that this is actually, I believe, my longest video I've ever done, considering that Frost Death Knight has only been changed a little bit. In the next video, we will be looking at the PvP and PvE talents for a Frost Death Knight. It should be shorter than this video, but I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Tearless out.